something strange is happening in the heart of suburbia. Time was when ordinary people could afford to rent in ordinary places like this, St Michael's Gate Estate in Peterborough. Not anymore. What's happening here in St Michael's Gate illustrates the absurdity of and the crisis in the government's housing policy. In order to help the homeless, dozens of families here lost their homes. Councils are facing a crisis in the numbers of homeless families needing somewhere to stay. Landlords can now make more money out of providing emergency accommodation than renting to traditional tenants. St Michael's Gate has always been owned as one block. In 2016, when a new landlord, Paul Simon Homes, bought the properties, its management company handed out eviction notices to almost everyone. 72 households, out of the blue, made homeless. Jelena Stevic survived the cull.
The street almost changed overnight. We went from a street where we were a very happy community, where we cared about one another, to people walking around that were stressed, that were saddened by the whole thing, that were shocked. But the thing that really stuck in my mind was the men. They just looked so crestfallen and so in shock by the whole thing about how they were now going to be able to find another roof for their families.
Jelena's contract started in 1996 when tenants' rights were more robust. Like much of Britain, St Michael's Gate was a mixed community, some of the tenants working, some getting benefits. She helped her neighbours find new places to live and fight the moves in the courts, and watched the heartbreak of a community torn apart.
People were working as well and having to look for somewhere else to live, trying to scrape some money together, to move, to find somewhere, thinking about schools, doctors, because, you know, people, when they move, they've got to look at all those things.
But this was done to help the homeless.
And made the people from this street, 72 households, homeless.
Sure, I mean, the landlords will say if they were here, listen, this is how we make our living and we do our best. It's, circumstances are difficult, but we're not doing anything wrong. That's what they'd say.
What a wonderful way to make a living, to evict people and make them homeless, purely for money.
So why would a property company evict all their tenants? The cost of helping homeless families has gone through the roof, but government attempts to tackle that has made matters worse. Landlords are finding it harder and harder to make money out of renting to people on low incomes. One of the big reasons for that is a freeze on many benefits. So the smart money is getting out of traditional renting and getting into providing emergency accommodation. But that's costing the taxpayer a ton of money. We're meeting Nikki Wells. She's a dinner lady, a cook at a local school, working hard to make ends meet. Peterborough Council moved her here into emergency accommodation last December, 9 months ago.
There's 5 of us, there's 4 children and me.
She and her family became homeless when her previous landlord terminated her contract. She simply couldn't afford to rent anywhere in the city. She's 2 boys and 2 girls. Both boys have asthma. One is partially sighted. Her doctors told her she needs to move to permanent accommodation for their health. The house was freezing last winter, and she's desperate to find somewhere with better heating before winter comes.
It's absolutely a nightmare. Like, when we're all in the lounge, it's like claustrophobic. You've got small bedrooms, you've got storage heaters which don't work in the winter. It is bitter cold in this house at the winter, to the extent all of my children sleep in my bed with me. And we're on about 15-year-old, 10-year-old, 7-year-old and 6-year-old, so I don't get much of the bed, as you can imagine, but they're all warm.
Green.
Nikki has complained to the agent, Stephen Phillips, about the quality of the house. For it, she pays £260 a month. The council, a further £720. rooms have been subdivided with partitions so the landlord can charge the council for more bedrooms. There's no central heating, and storage heaters cost a fortune. Her insurance on her car, which she needs to get to work and to get her children to school, jumped to £1,800 when she was moved here. So your car insurance has doubled because you're in temporary accommodation?
Yep. That's the only reason, because it's a PE1 postcode. And the lady on the phone, obviously when they asked if you're mortgaged, your own home or living council, I'm like, I'm temporary accommodation. Even it's a bit bad when the person on the end of your phone insurance says, really? She goes, I've been there myself. She goes, it does get better. I said, when? Because in a year it hasn't.
Nikki wants to move, but there's nothing available in either local housing associations or council housing, so she's stuck.
I see my children affected every day, but I can't do anything about it. I've tried. I've got emails from councillors saying don't give up. I've got to say I have given up. We just have to live with what we have to live with, through no fault of our own.
Do you think the people in charge of housing policy in this country know what they're doing?
No, not at all. No. Absolutely not at all.
Some of those evicted in 2016 by Paul Simon Homes and their agents ended up in debt. Beverly Nichols and her son were one of the 72 households who had to leave.
Hello. Hi, Duncan.
Thank you very much. She tried to contact Christakis Philippou, a director of both the landlord and the agent. He never returned her calls, she says, or Newsnight's emails.
I had no intention of leaving my property, so I had no savings to be able to move, to sort of think about a deposit that had to be put down, to buy new furniture, moving fees. It was a real worry. So my son had to take out a loan to enable us to be able to afford all of the costs involved. It was very, very stressful.
The move to this flat on the other side of town saddled Beverly and her son with £3,500 worth of debt. Meanwhile, local authorities are spending more and more council taxpayers' money on emergency accommodation. Peterborough Council is now spending £3.5 million more than 5 years ago. And it's becoming much tougher for people to find affordable homes to rent.
Very difficult. It's very difficult. I think generally in this country, people are turning much more towards renting than possibly buying, and therefore the demand in general is very, very high.
All the people we spoke to felt that government housing policy was, to put it mildly, hopelessly out of touch with the needs of struggling working people.
Social housing should not be a business, and it shouldn't be that people are profiting from the stress and the horrible way of living from other people. It's wrong.
And I don't think the general public have got any idea of the cost implications to them as taxpayers as to what is happening, and the lack of social housing that we have, and the fact that the homeless are not being helped.
Those in private rented accommodation are in trouble because the great jump in house prices has hurt the less well-off more than anyone else. They can't buy, and rents are going up. The evidence from St Michael's Gate points to the government's attempts to fix that problem failing people, and failing them badly.